Graphic novels have a very long and interesting history. People have been telling stories through illustrations rather than words for a very long time. Their use goes back to times as early as the ancient Egyptians with their use of hieroglyphics. The Egyptians, along with many different civilizations, used pictures as a method of getting points across so that reading was not necessary. The drawings were used to allow the working class, or the greater percentage of the population, to understand messages because most of them were illiterate. As technology advanced, machines capable of mass production were invented, giving workers more free time. With this new leisure time, workers looked for new means of entertainment and ways to pass the time. Cartoons and newspapers became a huge hit as more and more people turned to reading. Soon these graphics were found in every newspaper, and joke books with pictures became extremely popular. The newspaper cartoons that became the most popular were political cartoons. These graphics spoke to people and were about social wrongs or political events. One of the best examples is Poor Richard's Almanac. It was published by Benjamin Franklin in 1732 and contained political cartoons meant to strengthen support for the American Revolution. Another popular form of entertainment was the dime novel magazine, an early form of today's paperback book. These books were illustrated, and most of them were about sensational adventures or mysteries. Many were set in the American Wild West and helped to popularize characters like Davy Crockett and Buffalo Bill.
Aldous Toffee created The Adventures of Obadiah Oldbuck, the first graphic novel ever published. It appeared in a magazine called Brother Jonathan and was about a man and his lady love. It was formatted in a comic strip or tired fashion. The next comic, The Yellow Kid, created by Richard Outcault, appeared in 1895. It quickly became the first successfully merchant comic strip. It was so popular that the comic increased newspaper sales significantly. In 1897, the Hearst Syndicate came out with a collection of Yellow Kid comics in a book. This best-selling book could be seen as the first financially successful graphic novel. Because this book was such a big hit, it influenced other companies to also come out with comic-type books. In 1903, Sears and Roebuck distributed a promotional comic, which was also done by Richard Outcault, and started the character Buster Brown. It was the first nationally distributed comic book. In 1938, everything changed with the publication of Action Comics #1. This comic contained one of the most popular superheroes of all time, Superman. Soon after Superman was published, a huge variety of costume heroes landed in the newsstands. During the 1940s, comic books sold millions of copies to readers of all ages. In many other countries, comics were aimed at age groups rather than the level of reading like the US did. In Japan, manga comics came out, first as individual issues, then as album-type comic books. Manga is different because it is published in multiple genres, each one aimed at a specific age group or type of reader. It has now become one of the biggest, if not the biggest sections of graphic novel types. During the late 1970s and early 80s, a new factor changed the comic book world. The invention of malls and mass merchandisers eliminated the local store realtors, which were a major location for comic book sales. This was the beginning of comic book publishers selling to the direct market. The direct market allowed creators to start comics and albums using specific themes, which are aimed at target audiences. In 1985, DC Comics' The Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons was released. The Watchmen is noted as being the first collected graphic novel series. It was the first limited series comic, which were designed to only last a certain number of issues. Here is an interview with Alan Moore on The Watchmen.
You can suddenly see things that have actually been true about the characters right from their very inception in the late 30s. But nobody had applied a political interpretation to them or a sexual interpretation. Well, what Watchmen became was entirely a meditation about power. We were thinking about how each of these characters, to some degree, represented different sorts of power. We have the global situation unwinding and unfolding behind them, where you'd got different sorts of superpowers at odds with each other. An escalating situation in Afghanistan, and various other bits of bad world news that suggest that the nuclear doomsday clock is getting closer to the midnight mark. To some degree, if you're talking about superheroes, it's very likely to become a meditation upon power.
Graphic novels are an important part of the book trade. With a growing U.S. market for import books like manga, traditional bookstores and libraries are carrying more extensive collections of graphic novels. Today, the media's interest is on comic books, so the popularity of the graphic novel continues to grow. Graphics have been incorporated in reading for many years and only seem to be becoming more popular, influencing many forms of entertaining today.